The ancient rabbis noted that in the Torah, we are commanded 36 times to love the stranger. We will be sharing 5 examples of this message.
V'ger lo toneh ve'lo tilchatzenu, ki ger yam hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim.
You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress them, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
V'ger lo tilchatz ve'atem, yadatem et nefesh hager, ki ger yam hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim.
You shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the soul of the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
V'chi yagor icha ger be'artzechem, lo tonu oto.
When a stranger resides with you in your land, you shall not wrong them.
Kezrach mikem, yelachem, hager hagar ichem, v'ahavta lo kamocha, ki ger yam hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim, ani Adonai Elohechem.
The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love them as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I, the Lord, am your God.
Mishpat echad yeh lachem, keger ka'azrach yehiyeh, ki ani Adonai Elohechem.
You shall have one standard for stranger and citizen alike, for I, the Lord, am your God.
Ve'ahavtem et hager, ki ger yam hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim.
You must love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. In thinking about the Torah's commands to love the stranger, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs reflects, "Why should you not hate the stranger?" asked the Torah. "Because you once stood where they stand now. You know the heart of the stranger, because you were once a stranger in the land of Egypt. If you are human, so are they. If they are less than human, so are you. You must fight the hatred in your heart, as I once fought the greatest ruler and the strongest empire in the ancient world on your behalf. I made you into the world's archetypal strangers so that you would fight for the rights of strangers, for your own and those of others, wherever they are, whoever they are, whatever the color of their skin or the nature of their culture, because though they are not in your image, says God, they are nonetheless in mine." There's only one reply strong enough to answer the question, why should I not hate the stranger? Because the stranger is me.
On a more personal note, we all arrived at Williams as strangers to one another and to the various communities we would become a part of throughout the past 4 years. When we first entered the Williams Jewish community, to put it very simply, we had no idea how things worked. We didn't know what tunes the Williams College Jewish Association preferred for prayers, how to cook a weekly Shabbat meal for 100 people, how to write a daily message that would actually get people to come to an event, how to run a board meeting when nobody was listening, and that it's strangely necessary to rinse dishes completely before putting them into the Jewish Religious Center sanitizer because otherwise they come out very dirty. But we also didn't know how the Williams Jewish community could come to feel like a family, as a group of strangers could really love one another, and how the Jewish Religious Center could feel like a second home. It has been amazing to realize how you could grow to love strangers who you only met months before, and in the words of the Torah verses, almost know their souls. As we leave Williams, it is likely that we will all have the same experience of feeling like strangers in new communities. But as of now, we would like to thank Williams and the Williams Jewish community for accepting us as strangers.
The parable of the Good Samaritan is a lesson in compassion. It teaches us to recognize in the stranger a neighbor, to recognize in the foreigner a brother and sister. The Samaritan who passed by on the road to Jericho, who served the wounded man with compassion, is a bridge builder, a healing presence. For those of us who believe, the parable is also something more. It is a lesson in our salvation. As St. Augustine said, the man left half dead, treated with contempt, that man is the whole human race, you and me who were wounded by sin. The Good Samaritan, then, is Christ, who descended from the heavenly Jerusalem, looked on us with mercy, treated our wounds, and himself took care of us in the inn of his church. And he has given us a divine model to follow. Christ, the Good Samaritan, is the great and perfect exemplar of true service and true love. A scholar of the law asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and when I come back I will repay you whatever more you spend.' Which of these 3, do you think, was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" He said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise."
Matthew 25:40-45. And the king will answer them, "Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." Then he will say to those on his left hand, "You that are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they also will answer, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly, I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." When Hurricane Maria hit on September 20th, I was here, thousands of miles away from home and my family, when the phones went silent. I didn't know if my family was okay, how my friends in my town fared. At the same time, there was constant news of the devastation Maria had exacted on Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, to name only a few. This combination of uncertainty and yet increasing coverage of the damage made it difficult to be here when so much was happening there. In a trite sense, the people of Puerto Rico are some of the least of these, and I think most of us can be rallied to feed the hungry strangers and clothe the naked in the face of devastation. But I came to realize that there are often less obvious victims of pain and suffering in our world who Jesus invites us to care for, those far away from the actual impact, but whose worlds are shaken nonetheless. In the days after Maria, I saw some of the clearest expressions of caring for the least of these. There were kind words, emails, and hugs, yet this sort of emotional solidarity wasn't what stood out. Instead, it was the simple actions. The people who made sure I ate food and even brought it to me. The people who physically walked to my room and checked on me when I was sick to my stomach with the coverage I saw and the injustice in the administration's lack of response. These are just a few of the actions that help me see God's love and care for me. An estimated 4,645 people died in Puerto Rico as a result of Maria, more than double the death toll of Hurricane Katrina. These deaths were caused by anything from floods and collapsed roofs to the effects of not having electricity or safe water or access to hospitals, such that people who survived the initial landfall died of starvation or because they couldn't get crucial medical services. Just part of the tragedy of this story is that the people in places of power failed to deal with the people of Puerto Rico with the same reverence or care that they might treat a president, a diplomat, indeed, God himself. And that is exactly the shame this passage speaks of. Likely over and over, the class of 2018 will be reminded of their potential, that amongst us are some of the world's future leaders. All of us have unimaginable resources available to us simply because we are Williams grads. We must use that to change the narrative. Yet the charge in this passage is twofold, not just on the systemic level, but on the individual level. Even if we lack recognized influence, we can do so much to care and action through our dealings with people all around us. And I saw myself how so many of you have done this. I have so much hope that we'll continue that. For each one of us, at some point, are amongst the least of these.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. The acquisition of knowledge is binding on all Muslims, both men and women, without any discrimination. And follow not that of which you have no knowledge, for surely the hearing, the sight, and the heart, each of these you will be asked about. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "If anyone travels on a path in the quest for knowledge, Allah will ease for them the path towards paradise. The angels will lower their wings in their great pleasure with one who seeks knowledge. The inhabitants of the heavens and the earth and the fish in the deep waters will ask for forgiveness for the learned person. The superiority of the learned person over the mere devotee is like that of the moon on the night when it is full over the rest of the stars. The learned are the heirs of the prophets, and the prophets leave neither dinar nor dirham, but leave only knowledge. One who takes it takes an abundant portion of blessings." Iqra, read. The first word revealed from the Quran commanded its believers, both men and women, to read. In some Muslim societies, this practice is not encouraged. We see examples of young girls being denied their basic human right to an education. However, growing up with two sisters and surrounded by so many strong, educated women in my family, I learned to appreciate the value in learning. It's fitting that we stand here today in the middle of the month of Ramadan, as I'm reminded of past Ramadans, gathering with my parents and sisters after breaking our fast to learn more about the teachings of the Quran. My parents introduced us to powerful Muslim women in our history, like Khadija, one of the first people to accept the Quran's teachings, Aisha, one of the first legal scholars of Islam, and Fatima al-Fihri, who in 859 in Morocco established what is now the oldest continually running university in the world. For the past 1,200 years, Fatima's university has been opening doors to further the education of Muslims and non-Muslims alike. What is clear is that there is a rich history of seeking knowledge in Islam that has been passed down to us from the earliest times. Today we see Muslim women throughout American society and across the world succeeding in every walk of life. Here at Williams, we carry forward Islam's rich traditions that have valued knowledge for over 14 centuries.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of the most merciful and the most just. Allah does not burden any soul more than it can bear. Each gains whatever good it has done and is subject to what it has perpetuated. Lord, do not take us to task if we forget our error. Lord, lay not upon us a burden as you burden those before us. Lord, do not impose upon us what we do not have the strength to bear. Pardon us, forgive us, and have mercy on us. Did we not relieve your heart for you and remove the burden that weighed so heavily on your back and raise your reputation high? So truly, where there is hardship, there is also ease. Truly, where there is hardship, there is also ease. So when you are free, strive onward and direct your pleas to your Lord. As I read these verses from the Quran, some of my favorites, I'm reminded of the concept of sabr. Sabr is an Arabic word and an Islamic concept that often translates to the idea of patience. But to me, sabr extends beyond the idea of patience. Sabr is about struggling with hardship and enduring. As I reflect upon my time at Williams, the concept of sabr seems to be very fitting. Williams, in many ways, was all about patience and struggle. But perhaps what I want to emphasize the most is that sabr is not about enduring hardship or injustice in silence or romanticized complacency. Sabr is all about action. Our sabr is a means of enduring and resisting the injustices of the world we live in, while finding the strength in those around us to survive along the way. At Williams, I have seen our class strive for this endurance, this resistance, and this patience with their struggles. I saw sabr in the push for an Asian American Studies program at Williams. I saw sabr in the fight for justice in Palestine and the dismantling of borders with the wall on Presque Lawn. I saw in the At What Cost campaign call for more representation of faculty of color. Sabr is about resisting the injustices that we are complicit in on a daily basis that extend far beyond the reach of Williams and US borders. This week, US Border Patrol shot and killed 20-year-old Claudia Patricia Gomez Gonzalez in Texas. Yesterday, a Palestinian medic, Razan Ashraf Anjir, a 21-year-old, was killed by an IDF soldier while treating injured protesters in Gaza. In North Adams, just 5 days into 2018, activist Krista Lehigh-Steele was murdered, making her the first trans person killed this year. Sabr is our existence on this campus, and it's in our endurance. It's not the silence in the face of the racism of your professor, the sexism of your religious authorities, the Islamophobia of your entry mate. It is enduring it and challenging it if you have the capacity to do so. Sabr is what I hear in your stories on a daily basis about the ways in which you resist and exist on this campus despite all odds. But sabr is also about keeping ourselves aware of the ways in which we mess up, with others but also with ourselves. The world is deserving of our patience, but sometimes we forget that we are deserving of our own patience as well. The most difficult form of sabr can be about learning how to be patient with yourself. Whether it's realizing the physical limitations of your body, your emotional capacity to do certain things, or even struggling to figure out what you're going to do after graduation. I think sabr is an essential part of this graduation. Many of you at Williams have given me the patience, the faith, the self-love to continue to believe in our ability to go out into the world, create our own spaces, and continue to resist. Thank you.
Good afternoon. In 2004, journalist Thomas Frank wrote a widely discussed book about American politics called What's the Matter with Kansas? Whatever your impressions of that book, the answer to the title question definitely is not Janet Murguia. Janet, our speaker today, represents what's best about Kansas and America and Americans. Born and raised in Kansas City and a proud Jayhawk, Janet has been president since 2005 of Unidos US, formerly the National Council of La Raza, and one of America's leading advocates for the civil rights of Latinx and Hispanic people. She came to that position after a lifetime of public service. That life story is instructive and very relevant to why we invited her to speak with you today. I'll describe it briefly before stepping aside so she can speak for herself. Janet's parents emigrated to America from Mexico in the early 1950s with little money or formal education. They were, in that narrow stereotype, the kind of people Americans are now being told we should keep out. They settled in a Kansas City neighborhood called Argentine, as in silver, although in this case, a more appropriate metal would be steel, because it was a neighborhood of steel mills operated in large part by immigrants, including Janet's father. This country was built by the hard work of new arrivals and still is to a great extent, but also by their love and wisdom. The Murguias raised 7 children who went on to enrich this country in innumerable ways. Janet herself worked on Capitol Hill and in the White House. Her brother Ramon and sister Mary were the first Latino and Latina to serve on the federal benches in Kansas and Arizona, respectively. Her oldest sister Martha grew up with mental disabilities, yet also worked her whole life, sometimes taking 3 buses back and forth to her jobs. And Janet's generation, in turn, raised children who also went on to serve in the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Justice, as firefighters, as teachers, and others. The Murguia family improved America with their work and their love and their presence. They asked for nothing but the opportunity to do so. They lived the lives we have always been told and told ourselves that Americans should lead. And yet, Janet also grew up seeing similarly determined people pushed away. That attitude made no sense to her. It struck her as fundamentally inhumane and certainly not in the best interests of our nation. She did not ignore what she saw. She pursued a career in which she could work for change. First as a congressional staffer, and then in the Clinton White House as Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy Director of Legislative Affairs. In the late 1990s, she left the administration to work for change in another way as part of the leadership team for Al Gore's 2000 presidential campaign. After that historically close race was decided by the Supreme Court, Janet moved on to another field where she could do good in higher education. She served as Executive Vice Chancellor for University Relations at her alma mater before finally moving to the National Council of La Raza, the nation's premier organization advocating for Latinx and Hispanic people and families, where she continues today under the organization's new name, Unidos US. It is in that role that Janet has made perhaps her most lasting mark. She combines her principles and vision with deep political experience to launch a brilliant strategy of converting Hispanic demographic growth into voting power. During the 2008 election alone, La Raza and its partners helped register almost 200,000 Hispanic people to vote for the first time. Under her leadership, the organization has also helped more than 1.5 million eligible immigrants apply for citizenship while lobbying, in the very best sense of that word, for progress in education, healthcare, immigration, civil rights, and economic opportunity, as well as protections against hateful rhetoric and hate crimes targeting the Latino community. In her life and her work for equal rights, protections, and opportunities, in these and many other ways, Janet Murguia has advanced the Hispanic community and encouraged, sometimes coaxed, sometimes pushed America to show its best self. She exemplifies what's right about the Murguia family, about Kansas, and I believe about all of us together. Please join me in welcoming Janet Murguia.
Good evening, and thank you so much for that very, very kind and generous introduction. I'm deeply honored to be with you all here for your baccalaureate, and am impressed that you, at this moment of great celebration, have taken this time to consider the responsibility that comes with the knowledge you gained here at Williams College. Today's program elevates the concept that knowledge is not a destination, but rather a path leading toward the quality of community for which we continue to yearn. I want to talk to you tonight about that path in a way that I hope will have some relevance to you as you leave this beautiful school and make your way in the world. But first, I want to extend my heartfelt congratulations to all of you. This is a tremendous milestone. I know it required a lot of work, sacrifice, time, and money for you to get to this point. For most of you, it's been a 4-year journey, but for some, maybe even a little bit longer. But that's okay. You stuck with it and are here today. And you deserve all the acclaim and celebrating that you and your family will enjoy this weekend. But as you celebrate, I want you to keep in mind that no one makes this journey alone. Somewhere along the line, a teacher, a professor, a counselor, or a coach encouraged you and mentored you. I hope you will thank that person today. I hope you will also remember your family and thank them for all that they did to get you to this point and this moment. They deserve a big hand. Let's thank them together. Imagine, if you would, that I could magically transport you forward in time to 35 years from now. You're all here, sitting in these same seats, except now it's 2053. And most of your hair, at least for those of you who still have hair, is gray. Maybe our bodies have changed. When you look around to your classmates in the room, perhaps you'll see 1 or 2 members of Congress, maybe a governor, maybe a president. You will see CEOs, teachers, entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, as well as a scientist or two. Maybe several of you will have written books, become a movie star, or are singing on the big stage. Some of you may be wealthy, while others may have dedicated their lives to less lucrative endeavors. In this future, though, 35 years from now, when you look back at the path that you traveled, you will find it driven by individual choices you made. What career you selected, where you chose to live, with whom you chose to marry or partner, what job you quit, what political party you joined, what mentors you chose. Every choice you make shapes the life you lead. Over time, your choices become your story, the unique history of your life. They define who you are. Right now, here in the present, your story is mostly unwritten, and the choices available to you are almost limitless. That's why I wanted to talk to you today, because your choices will also define the world around you. They will shape the society in which we live, either by your actions or your inactions. Each of you will help define the future of our country. It is not only about what causes you champion in your life, it's also about what you choose to tolerate. What are you willing to accept as the norm? What you challenge and what you permit to go unchallenged that shapes our world. As the head of a civil rights organization, I'm very aware of the choices that we as a people make. I see the consequences of what we tolerate. I see the byproduct of what we accept as the norm. I know firsthand the poverty and destitution that comes from limited access to health care and a good education. I understand the indignity that comes with racial profiling laws and the denigration of members of my community as rapists and murderers and drug dealers, and most recently as animals. I know firsthand about the impact on families who are being torn apart by militant deportation policies and the deep pain and suffering such actions bring, often to the most vulnerable. Such choices define us as a society. They define our civilization. They define our values and our humanity. As you embark on your careers and lives outside of Williams College, such choices will become your responsibility to make or unmake. Will we, as a society, build walls or bridges? Will we strive to stoke division, or will we seek to find common ground? Will a shot at the American dream be reserved for a select few, or will it be for all of us? Like some of you, I am a first-generation college graduate, and I am here today because of the choices my parents made. Both of my parents could be described as humble and simple people with little education. They came to this country from Mexico in the early 1950s and settled, as you heard, in Kansas of all places. My dad had a 7th grade education, my mom a 5th grade education. And my dad ended up working for 37 years at a steel plant. With 7 kids, my mom didn't work outside the home. We lived, all 9 of us, in a very small house with only 1 bathroom. My siblings and I slept dormitory style in 1 large bedroom. My twin sister Mary and I would have our Monday, Tuesday dress, our Wednesday, Thursday dress, and then our Friday outfit when we went to elementary school. We didn't know we didn't have the resources. You know, we didn't have a phone until I was in the 8th grade. No clothes dryer or automatic washer. My mom washed clothes in a wringer washer until then. But there we were, all 9 of us, in this little house. In Kansas City in the 1950s, when my parents went to the movie theater, they had to sit in a separate section. My father and other persons of color early on were directed to use a separate bathroom at the steel plant where he worked. My mom pitched in by babysitting to earn a few extra dollars because I guess 7 kids just wasn't enough. But we never had much money. But I never heard them once complain. My parents instilled in us a strong sense of values, including a strong sense of family, faith, community, hard work, and sacrifice. And they taught us always to value ourselves. And in the 1980s, 5 of their kids were in college, all at the same time, thanks to the generosity of scholarships, work study, and financial aid opportunities. After all was said and done, 6 of their 7 kids earned post-secondary education degrees. You heard about my oldest sister, Martha, but even she took 3 buses to go to work and had a job for 35 years. 4 of us became lawyers. My brother Ramon was the first in our family to graduate and in our community from Harvard Law School. Today, Ramon is a lawyer in private practice in Kansas City. He serves on the board of trustees for the Kellogg Foundation, where most recently he stepped down as chair, the first Hispanic to chair a major foundation in the country. And you heard, my brother Carlos was the first Hispanic federal district court judge in Kansas. My twin sister Mary now serves on the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, but was the first Latina to serve on the federal district court in Arizona. And in addition, they're the first brother and sister in the history of the U.S. to serve as federal judges. As for me, you see, I'm the underachiever in the family. But my proudest moment came when my parents paid me a visit in the White House. I'll never forget it. We gathered in the Roosevelt Room just outside the Oval Office in the West Wing. And my parents were nervous and a little anxious. And we were waiting there, and as we waited, I heard my mom just softly say, ¿Cómo llegamos hasta aquí? How did we get here? And tears started to come down her face. And as we entered the Oval Office, my dad made a beeline for the president. He stuck his hand out right away, and he said, "Mr. President, thank you for giving my daughter this opportunity." President Clinton shook his hand, he put his other hand on my mom's shoulder, and he said, "Mr. Murguia, Janet walked you into this office, and I hired her, but you're the ones who got her here." Two people with little means worked very hard, sacrificed much, and chose to dedicate themselves to the education of their family and service to their community. I am a witness to, and in many ways evidence of, their unending belief in el sueño americano. Their choices, their sacrifice, their hard work paved the way for my siblings and I to make choices of our own, to make contributions of our own, to have dreams of our own. Each generation, each of us, has a responsibility to move our country forward, to strive for what our Constitution describes as a more perfect union. It calls on each of us to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and future generations. That's what my parents did. It's what I do. It is what we, the people, do. And now, it's your turn. I will grant you that it is not easy, this responsibility. Since our country's founding, we have struggled to live up to the promise of America. It's only in my lifetime that state-sponsored segregation was outlawed by Congress. It's only in my lifetime that discrimination in the workplace based on gender was made illegal. It was in my lifetime that the American Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality from its official list of mental illness. It is only in the last decade that the first Latina was named to the Supreme Court and the first African American was elected to the presidency. The world is not an easy place. We face many threats, both here and abroad, and the social, economic, and technological upheavals challenging our country can be extreme. Yet, I have great hope and confidence in our future because I have great confidence in you and your generation. Threatened by school violence, I have seen you, and some even younger than you, inspire a movement that is reshaping our country. I've seen you stand up and call BS to those in power. You understand that advocacy is not a passive vocation. You understand that activism means raising your hand to represent. You know that to be heard, sometimes you have to say, "Me too," and time's up. I am confident that your voices will be heard and that your votes will count. It's easy to demonize people who disagree with you, to dismiss their points of view as unworthy. I believe you and your generation will rediscover the commonalities that bind us together as Americans. You will not retreat behind labels or the color tones of our skin or the God that we worship. You will not denigrate those who view the world through a different lens. You will listen to each other and hold each other accountable. In you, I see the hope for our future, a generation that will define our common values, and our common cause. And today, the future has never looked brighter. Today, the world is a better place because you are in it. Graduates of 2018, enjoy the next 35 years and beyond. Strive to see your dreams come true. Have faith in yourself. Work hard. Remember that integrity matters, values matter. Be courageous. Put the knowledge you have gained at this wonderful institution to good use. I congratulate you all on the choices you and your families have made that led you to this moment. Your accomplishment is already significant and well-deserved. May all your choices lead to such great success and potential for your careers, your lives, and for the good of our country. Congratulations. Thank you.
In unity.
Welcome to the great class of 2018 on this lovely and auspicious day. I'm taking about 7 minutes to cover 4 years, so here we go. What does 4 years mean? Well, last fall when I was teaching the physics of special relativity to a group of eager first years, we thought a lot about time and how we perceive its passage. So yeah, it's actually true that exactly what you mean by 4 years really does depend on the observer. But physics really has nothing to say about the sense that 4 years can go by in the blink of an eye. And at the same time, 4 years can seem to last a lifetime. After 23 years of teaching and also raising 3 children, I think I can say, and maybe you'll agree, that while the moments can pass slowly, sometimes seeming almost frozen in time, the semesters and the years can somehow seem to slip by awfully fast, and the future can seem to be rushing towards us. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but obviously, my dubious claims to know something about the perception of time won't help you navigate its passage in your lives, and it certainly doesn't equip me to handle it better in my own life. There's just never going to be enough of it, and you're probably not going to figure out how to make more. So I'm putting aside the science, and I'm coming at this another way. Some of you may have heard me at Claiming Williams Day this year briefly recount the story of my own parents. How my father grew up in Kolkata, India, during the time of Indian independence and in the era of Gandhi's nonviolent protests, and was drawn into that world before emigrating to America, where he became involved in the civil rights movement, and also married my mother, a white woman from Maine who traced her ancestry practically back to the Mayflower. It's a story that on the one hand seems totally implausible, yet I'm sure to them there was a kind of inevitability to each step of their journey. Perhaps you have a similarly improbable family story. Certainly over the course of your life, I bet you'll experience things you could never anticipate right now, and I certainly hope so. Time that moves both slowly and quickly, life that's both inexorable and at the same time unexpected. You almost certainly experience these paradoxes during some form or other during your time at Williams. Sometimes they may have seemed like hypocrisies or perhaps simply just technical errors that would be so easy to fix if someone in the administration were just paying attention to the right things. But just as often you were discovering a truth that other generations struggled with too, which is that the world we live in is incoherent, inconsistent, frustrating, and yet sometimes very, very wonderful, and often several of these at the same time. That discovery was part of my growing up, and now it's part of yours. I believe one lesson to be embraced is that not all paradoxes are actually dysfunctions that you have to cure and eliminate. Contradictions are in many ways the central feature of life. For inquisitive people like us, and I think if you come to Williams and come through Williams, it generally means you're either naturally inquisitive or learn to be that way. For inquisitive people like us, these intrinsic paradoxes can be a gift. They give us a purpose to which we can apply our intellect and our creativity, one that ranks somewhat higher on the pyramid of needs than the requirements of air, food, water, and sleep. Now, a paradox in the original Greek is a contrary opinion. In the dictionary, a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that, when investigated or explained, may prove to be well-founded or true. In other words, a fact of life. A complicated one, to be sure, but like we humans ourselves are complicated. So definitely get ready to embrace your paradoxical and contradictory nature. Become the most interesting and worthwhile pastiche you can. Especially in these prime years of life, don't obsess about consistency and linearity. It won't happen anyway. Just get interested in stuff and try things. Connect dots that don't at first make sense together. It might require you to slow down and unplug, because the plugged-in world is all about putting like with like. People who viewed X also viewed Y. Break free of that confining logic. I think you'll be glad you did. Now, if this is beginning to sound like an argument for the kind of education you've had at Williams, then good, thanks for noticing. Because I firmly believe that your Williams education, if it's done its job, has prepared you to navigate just such an unpredictable path full of twists and turns. Thanks to the very same unpredictability of life, of course, it's impossible for you or me to know which aspects of your Williams education you'll tap into as you move through your life's journey, but it will be there for you when you need it. You might wind up drawing from lessons of a big oral presentation from your sophomore spring, or that brutal problem set that you slogged through successfully, whether alone or with your trustee study group. Perhaps a term paper, or the completion of your senior thesis. Or maybe some extracurricular experience that gave you the very most impactful learning experience of your life. But because of the way life works, those lessons may not have all been joyful or fun when you learned them, but they'll be a resource to you at some crucial moment in the future, a touchstone to guide you in your next, even more ambitious adventure. So I've been talking a lot about how you might think about the world ahead of you. So in closing, I want to implore you to be as guided as much by your heart as by your head. Churchill reminded us that many great things are simple and can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. Of course, striving for these in one's own life or in the world around us is far from simple. In a world increasingly full of uncertainty, inequality, and contradictions, you'll have to bring to the task everything you have to offer: your intellect and your empathy, your creativity and your analytical talents, your best instincts of all kinds. And you're in a great position to do so, especially after just hearing from a leader who embodies this approach in her own remarkable life's work. We can all take inspiration from stories like Janet Murguia's, wherever our paths take us. Friends, it's been my pleasure to have shared this campus with you for the past 8 semesters, and my great honor to have taken on this particular special role of president in your last spring. Embrace the future with all its question marks, keep in touch with each other, celebrate the moments of connection, and savor each small step forward, or even sideways, in your journey. And when you return to the Purple Valley, we'll be here to welcome you home. Congratulations, class of 2018.
You maybe remain seated during the blessings, and I'll have to make mine quick or long because I don't think I'll be here in 35 years. So I'll miss what you all look like. O mystery divine, whose voice is heard in hearts too numerous to number, whose presence guides and gathers the human family, impart upon this impressive company of students, upon their families and friends, the grace to grasp the solemnity of this celebration, knowing truly what it means to have shared with common purpose freedom of inquiry in the letters, arts, and sciences, appreciating fully the solidarity that is formed through mutual respect, generosity of spirit, openness of heart, and the willingness of one hand to reach out to another. May this end be for our graduates the beginning of new learning, built securely upon all that has been entrusted to them here at Williams College by the dedication and consideration of the faculty and the staff. May they be always worthy of this trust, and with self-respect, attentiveness to all and to the world, nurture in every place they find themselves, and in each endeavor, the compassion, integrity, and humble decency that will enhance the lives of those whom they will meet. Give to them and to all of us gathered here this day the courage and conviction to accept new challenges, to embrace unexpected opportunities, to cultivate peace, and to instill always and everywhere an enduring sense of goodwill. Amen.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful and the compassionate. By all of the names through which we respectively call upon the divine, I ask that the source of life, the gracious bestower of mercy, and the creator of transformation, help you, our graduates, to deploy your entire being in future endeavors that uplift and ennoble yourselves and others and extend the widest and most enduring benefits towards our common humanity. May the divine generosity guide you towards humility in light of what remains to be learned, and some of which will always remain incomprehensible. May you be enriched with abiding gratitude for the women and men who have paved your way through quiet sacrifice. And may you discover the joy found in serving others and in inspiring hope among those who have only known resignation to injustice. May you taste the peace that can imbue your life when you offer compassion and kindness towards all beings, knowing there are no inferior or inconsequential people, just one human family, interconnected, interdependent, in ways we must no longer fail to appreciate. Amid every callous label and construct intended to further fragment a world we already struggle to share, may we reject the ease of lapsing into uninformed judgments and reductive assumptions in preference for the labors and fruits of humble inquiry, nuance, and honest self-study. May we remain open to the project of lifelong learning and inward rectification as a means towards summoning the finer, sacred aspects of our nature, created for this very moment as an invitation to bring offerings of hope and wisdom for the challenges of these times. As new destinations will come into your focus, may you, our graduates, be good stewards of the trust in your midst. Your ability to not only map out a future filled with purpose and consequence, but the chance to fulfill your aspirations. We close with the deepest of thanks for all that this graduating class has learned and accomplished here at Williams, and for all that you will contribute well beyond to our fragile common home and common humanity. Amen, and go in peace.
By way of a blessing, I'd like to share a brief episode from the Torah, the mythic story of the Jewish people. You may know the story of Moses. The Israelites are enslaved in Egypt, as we heard earlier. 2 members of the tribe of Levi give birth to a son, and they hide him, fearing persecution, place him in a basket on a river. The basket is discovered by Pharaoh's daughter. She raises the boy as her own, yet thanks to the boy's sister Miriam, who follows the basket down the river, Moses' real mother is brought in as his wet nurse. Thus, despite growing up surrounded by wealth and opulence in the corridors of power of an oppressive regime, Moses learns the story of his people and remains connected to them. He knows who he really is. The Torah tells us that after many days, Moses grows up and he goes out to his sisters and brothers who are toiling in the fields in the cities as slaves. We are told that he sees their burden, vayar b'sivlotam, and if that were not enough, as if seeing his people suffering back-breaking labor and mistreatment, witnessing the denial of their basic human dignity, as if that were not enough to move him to rage or despair, he sees something else. Vayar ish mitzri makeh ish ivri me'achav. He sees an Egyptian taskmaster beating an Israelite. So what does he do? The Torah says, Vayifan ko v'cho vayar ki ein ish. He looks this way and that, and he sees that there's no person. Now, some commentators understand this to mean that no one was looking at what was happening. An Egyptian beating an Israelite, nothing new to see here, who cares? But others suggest something else is going on. Moses looks around because he hopes, he prays that someone else see that something is happening drastically, profoundly unjust and wrong. He pleads and begs that someone else will recognize the injustice of what is happening to his brethren, and he wants that other person to step up. But he sees ki ein ish. There is no one else. There's just him. It's his duty to act. And so he does. He strikes the Egyptian, buries his body in the sand, yada, yada, yada. The next day, he discovers his deed has been reported to Pharaoh, so he flees to Midian. So by way of blessing to all of you this afternoon, to the class of 2018, as well as your family and friends who've come to celebrate you on this most special of times, I want to bless you that you find inspiration in the example of Moses. That no matter where you find yourselves in the road ahead, that you remember where you come from. That you look at your brethren, the members of your families of birth and of your choice, your graduating class, your future communities, the people you surround yourself with in the years and months ahead, the people you meet at the store and pass on the street, the people with whom you may disagree, and that you really see them. See them in their fullness, in their joys, and like Moses, try to see their suffering. I bless you that, like Moses, you too will look around you. I also bless you that once you have seen clearly and assessed the wrongs that you see, once you have empathy for the suffering of others, once you've looked around and found your allies, I bless you that when you see that something is wrong, you will respond. Hopefully, you won't need to strike down an Egyptian taskmaster. There are less violent means of response. So I bless you that your actions will be mindful and full of compassion for both victims and oppressors who themselves suffer as they create more suffering through their actions. Because it is through our actions that we most fully show who we are and what we care about. As you prepare to take your leave of this place, I bless you that you find inspiration and satisfaction from all your endeavors, that you care for others as they have cared for you, and that you continue to inspire and support your loved ones as they have done so for you.
Whether with heads bowed low and folded hands, whether with bended knees, prostrate limbs, or other reverent postures, in our still sacred moments, mystery speaks to the soul, the spirit, the self, the necessary reassurance that there is always something to be considered a blessing at the day's end, just as at the day's beginning. So let it be that we here gathered with outstretched arms, kind hearts, and open minds may anticipate what has yet to be revealed, accept what has already been discovered, and at all times celebrate in story, song, and dance, with word, with voice, with gesture, our gratitude for this place, and especially for one another. For now, for tomorrow, forever. Amen.